I'm really getting into my middle grade fantasy or like modern fantasy, and I am enjoying it so much. This is polyamorous, bisexual, all of the amazing things that I want possibly. I am literally making that up like in my head. I think I need to reread the first two before carrying on the series because I have no idea what happened. I think it was a fever dream when I read them both. Hello my angels, welcome back to another video. My name is Ro and today we are going through my 4.75 star books from 2021. Now that is a little bit of a misleading title because some of these are not necessarily 4.75 stars. In fact, one of them was only 4 stars, but the inherent idea behind this video is to let you guys know certain books that I read in 2021 that didn't quite make my top 10, didn't even quite make my 5-star battle bracket video. These are the ones that I still A, think about, B, have enjoyed the sequel even more than the first, or C, just still really recommend to everyone, even though there was like something slightly missing for me personally. I feel like so many people give these books 5 stars. That kind of 0.25 that's missing from most of them is more of a personal preference thing. So I still want to really shout about these books and let you guys know about them so that you can maybe pick them up and see if you like them too. Now we're going to kick off with a really big one for me, and this personally was a slight to my whole being, giving this book less than 5 stars, but this was Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire. This is book 6 in the Wayward Children series. At my time of reading, it was the most recent book that had come out. Where the Drowned Girls Go, the 7th book, has recently come out as of a couple of weeks ago in January. Now, Across the Green Grass Fields is actually a little bit different from the other Wayward Children books in that it follows a character that we have actually never met before. I mean, obviously in the first book you follow characters you've never met before, but throughout the series and onwards from books 1 to 6 then, you follow prequels and or current adventures from characters you've met in the first book, and if any new characters are introduced, they are introduced to the characters that you met in the first book, if that makes sense. There's an established character arc, there's already people going on, and then another character's added in. This actually just is a prequel that Seanan decided to do for a character called Reagan? Yeah, Reagan. And she goes to like this horse world with centaurs, fawns, like all sorts of things, but it's mainly kind of centered around horses. Having followed Seanan McGuire for ages now on Twitter, I do actually understand a lot about why she wrote this book for herself, let alone everyone else, but she actually really loves My Little Pony. So this is, I think, her love letter to My Little Pony. Yeah, this one, I think it's hard to get into if you're so used to the other characters. I think this one is the most low rated out of all of them so far, and I can understand, especially if people had to wait for this book and they especially thought it would be about characters they'd already seen. Like, people really want to see Cade's story, who is a trans boy. I was gonna say man, but he's like 15. A trans boy. Then they get this, which is just a random character they've never met. However, Reagan does apparently show up in Where the Drowned Girls Go, I think. I have not read it yet, but I think that's kind of a good way to introduce her. Maybe Where the Drowned Girls Go should have come up first and then this, but it's done now. I can't really talk anything about it. But I still really enjoyed this for the most part. I did actually listen to it on audio, which may slightly have factored into my rating, but I did feel the ending was ever so slightly rushed and a little tiny bit unsatisfying. I think because it was rushed, I don't think the idea behind it or like the plot twist or whatever that happened was, I don't think I was unhappy with that. I think it was just slightly rushed near the end. It felt like a lot of build up, and these books in general, even though they're very short, find a way of making them feel longer and like a fully complete story. But this one in particular, near the end, I think it was a little bit rushed, and I didn't feel as much of a connection to Reagan as I have with almost every other kid in all of the books. It was so close to a 5-star, but I did have to knock it down half a star, which is, oh, God forbid. But I genuinely was disappointed because I want to give them all 5 stars, but like, that's not, I'm not disappointed in the book as a whole, if that makes sense. Next up we have Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is a basically kind of black girl magic middle grade book about Amari, who goes to the Supernatural Bureau. She has a missing brother who was like top dog. He was like so cool and everyone loved him and he was one of the top agents there, and he went missing. So when she gets invited to go to this school or kind of trial type stuff to get in to be an agent, her determination is basically focused on finding her brother, and she also finds out some things about herself as well along the way, makes some friends, makes some enemies, that kind of usual shtick for middle grade. This is incredibly well written. I really loved all of the adventure that Amari went on. I really enjoyed the trials that she went through, trials on my bag. The only slight thing that made it miss out so tiny for me was the ending was slightly rushed. I feel like it's similar to Across the Green Grass Fields. The kind of ending and like the climax only happened over like a few pages and a few paragraphs, and I feel like it definitely should have been more drawn out, like the final battle or, you know, like that kind of thing. And the revelations were kind of coming a bit too quickly for me. I think there could have been a bit more of a build up and a bit more of just like that scene could have been drawn out a bit more, I feel. I think that's what dropped the slight 0.25 for me. But overall, this is such a good book. Like, I'm really getting into my middle grade fantasy or like modern fantasy, and I am enjoying it so much, and I'm really excited for the sequel. I've pre-ordered, this is the Waterstones edition, I can't tell really, but it's got silver sprayed edges. I've pre-ordered the sequel from Waterstones, which has purple edges, my favourite colour. But I'm really hoping in the sequel there will be a bit more character development, especially between Amari and a certain character who is kind of like, there's almost like a rivals to friends or rivals to lovers, but not really lovers because they're children. And then there's her best friend as well in this, who she first met, and I just really enjoyed their dynamic. And yeah, just overall I really enjoyed it, and hopefully that kind of rushed ending will be something that's a new writer type thing that will kind of be fixed in the next couple of books, as obviously as you carry on writing you get better at writing in general. So I'm very excited for the sequel for this. Next up is A Dowry of Blood, and this is by S.T. Gibson. This is a novella and it's about Dracula's brides. This is polyamorous, bisexual, all of the amazing things that I want in gothic fiction, gothic horror, gothic romance, any romance, to be honest. This is written very strangely. So it's written in the second person and it's very lyrical, very flowery, very gothic. And I really ate this up. I don't actually think I can really put my finger on why it wasn't quite a 5-star. Sometimes it is just based on like vibes only. I think it just wasn't an instantaneous 5-star. There is just that part of me that has, if it's not an instant 5-star, it can't be a 5-star kind of thing. Like, I don't have to think about a 5-star, if that makes sense. If I ever have to think about giving it 5 stars, it's probably not. And that was the same way I rated Across the Green Grass Fields, because like I so badly wanted to rate it 5 stars, but the fact that I had to think about it was like, no, it's not a 5 stars then. So yeah, I don't really know why it's not. Like, I guess there just wasn't much, there's not much plot, and I'm a plot person, but I knew that going in, so I can't really say that about it. I don't know. I just think everyone should read it. It's very different. It's very well written, I think. I think it really evokes emotions very well. It's lyrical and dreamy reimagining of Dracula's brides. So yeah, I would genuinely use those words to describe it. They're very accurate. I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. It's really good. It just wasn't quite a 5-star, and hence why I'm making this video. I still want to shout about this book and make everyone read it. Sorry that this was a bit short for this one. Next up is Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. This was a YA sci-fi that came out in October. This is the Illumicrate edition, came in the October box. This you may have seen me talking about in my December wrap-up, so I'm not gonna go super into it now because I think I did actually go quite a lot into it in my December wrap-up. But this is essentially a world where there's chrysalids, which are kind of like robots. Men and women can pilot these robots, and the main character, Wu Zetian, her sister gets killed by this, and women in general usually get killed by it, but the men survive. She decides to volunteer and try and kill the guy who killed her sister, hence the kind of Iron Widow type title. It goes really well. There's polyamorous rep. The main character is amazing. I think the 4.75 for me with this came from the relationship. So in the polyamorous relationship, I feel like there could have been a bit more of a build-up between the kind of enemies to lovers type side of the relationship. It did feel kind of like a slowly but then all at once type of deal. But I think it would have been more poignant if there hadn't been a reconciliation or like an agreement or like them getting on before the events of the end of the book. I feel like it would have been more poignant, and then you would have been able to have a very, I mean, the cliffhanger on the end of this is already very good, but I think the emotional cliffhanger would have been even better if there hadn't been kind of a more established relationship beforehand. But I know in books they tend to kind of, I feel like maybe it was a publishing thing where they want you to get some of the romance in before book 2, possibly. I am literally making that up, like, in my head. It's just me speculating on the publishing industry. But yeah, this was incredible. It's a wild ride from start to finish. I read it in 2 sittings and it's 400 pages. It's so fast to read, and I just think everyone needs to read it. And I said in my December wrap up, everyone I know except one of my patrons has rated it 4 or 5 stars. So I would highly, highly recommend this to everyone. And I'm really excited for book 2. I'm hoping the relationship gets a bit more development, because you can get to see much of it, and it kind of felt tiny bit rushed in this. Only a tiny bit. And I feel like I'm very spicy, I was gonna say. That's not what I meant. Fussy is what I meant to say about relationships and how quick they happen versus how slow and how much development they get before they actually kiss or whatever. So I think that might just be a me thing, but in general, this is incredible. Next up, we have The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I don't have a physical version of this. I only have physical copies of book 3 and 4, but I listened to this on audio on Audible, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it like a 4.5, I think, in the end. This is really, really good. Jade recently has discovered it and is absolutely eating the shit up. Same with like Cassidy and I think Bex as well, who funnily enough, all 3 of them I'm starting a book club with. Backlist Book Club will be linked in the description for Cassidy's announcement video. Yeah, this one, I don't remember a lot about it because I did read it in like January. It was a January read, so that was literally a year ago now. So it's very hard to remember everything that happened. But it's about the main character, Kieran, and he basically is kind of destined to not save the world, but to destroy the world. And there's lots of high-level fantasy shit going on in this series. If you don't do well with epic fantasy, I think this is even more than epic. This is like legendary fantasy. It's very confusing a lot of the time, and there are a lot of timelines and a lot of POVs going on, but I like stuff like that. I just thought it was really good. I thought it could have maybe been a bit shorter in general. I think some of it could have been edited and cut, but overall, I think that was only what dropped it for me. I really liked all of the characters. I really liked all of the development of the story. I was just so intrigued by everything going on. The intrigue was super high for this one, which wasn't so much in the sequel for me, but I'm still going to carry on the series because I think I need to reread the first 2 before carrying on the series because I have no idea what the fuck happened. I think it was a fever dream when I read them both. Still want to continue series, even though I think I gave 3 stars to the sequel, but it was like a high 3 stars, you know? It was fine. So I'm gonna continue the series and hopefully talk a bit more about it in the future. But yeah, I think it could have been shorter, was why it was not a 5-star. Next up is another one that I talked about in my December wrap-up, and that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown. And I did mention why this wasn't quite a 5-star there as well, so I won't go too much into it. Romance in general, they have that cliffhanger at the end that's all like, oh, they have like a final confrontation where something happens and there's miscommunication and stuff. And I didn't like it in this or in Chloe Brown, and I didn't think it made sense, but the one in this one made more sense than the one in Chloe Brown did, in my opinion. I really liked the anxiety rep, really liked the rep of Danny in general. Just everything and who she was just me. She is me, I am her, we are one. I really enjoyed the kind of fake dating trope in this. I thought it was really well done and like had a good reason to start doing the fake dating type thing. I really enjoyed the humor. The humor in these is so funny. It genuinely made me laugh out loud. This one was even funnier than the first one. But yeah, that kind of 0.25 that's just below was just that thing at the end. It's like something always happens, but I feel like it doesn't really make sense. I feel like there could be a better reason for that to happen. And then obviously happily ever after, because that is what romance is. But I like the happily ever after part. It's the bit before I didn't like. Amazing. Actually a really high rating for me considering it's a romance. I'm not really a romance reader, so this was pretty good. Wish there was more smut though as well. I think that also was part of it. It needs more smut, considering they were fuck buddies for however long. Needed more smut scenes. Next up, we're going to talk about Jade City, and the sequels are behind me. So this is the first book in the Greenbone saga. This got a 4.5 from me. I think that it was incredible, and Jade War I have read already and I gave it a full 5 stars. But Jade City was really good setup. I think possibly there could have been a bit more action for me personally nearer the beginning. I think sometimes it took a little while to get to stuff in this one only, but then in the second one, because there was not any setup, you already knew the world, we could get to a bit more action and a bit more like shit going down, which is what I want to see in a book. And I just think these covers are incredible from Illumicrate, and the edges, these are probably the most beautiful books I own. I'm not gonna lie, let's be quite honest here. I don't really know what else to say. Like, I feel like this is going around BookTube at the moment, so there's not really much point telling you about it, but it is kind of like, I used to say it was 1920s, but I think I was getting it mixed up in something else. But this is modern day, but kind of like a fantasy alternative world. So in K-Con they have jade, like literally the stone jade, and they can use it to enhance their ki. I don't think they call it ki, but it's like enhance their aura. And the more jade you can wear, the more powerful you are, but also it takes a toll on you. And the people of K-Con are the only people who can use jade. Everyone else, it does nothing, like, if you put it on. And basically there are 2 main clans, the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan. We follow the No Peak clan. These are the goodies, and the Mountain clan are the baddies. The Mountain clan basically don't give a fuck. They are helping develop this drug that lets normal people use jade. It's addictive, it's bad for you, it's awful. And just trying to make money off it basically, and then selling jade also to like foreign countries, which in turn like creates bad politics with other countries because they then do war with the jade, and like lots of high level politics going on, lots of high level like historical stuff going on. I'd say the jade actual fantasy elements aren't very big considering each book is named Jade something. It's more about the politics of jade, the distribution of jade, like lots of things like that, rather than the actual magical elements and how they use them. Although that obviously is used and comes out a lot, I wouldn't say this is really super fantasy-esque, which I think is why Spooks really enjoyed it, because she's not very good at fantasy, but this is more like historical fiction with a fantasy twist. So yeah, that was the only thing that kept it down. Like, I think it could have been a bit more snappier and had a little bit more action in it, but otherwise I get that because it is a setup book, you need to like set the scene, so I do understand that. 4.5, sequel was 5 stars, can't wait to read the third one. Next up we have Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. This was another 4.5 for me. I listened to it on Audible, or audio on Audible, and this is really good. Another one Jade will be pleased with. I really like this. The narrator is incredible. I would say Joe Jameson's like shot up to one of my favorite narrators now, but I can't really hear him as anyone but the main character from Traitor's Blade now, because I tried to listen to Spellslinger and obviously he just has his own voice, so I couldn't listen to Spellslinger because all I could picture was the Greatcoats, which is Traitor's Blade is the first book in the Greatcoats. I think with this, most of it I just loved it start to finish, and then there was something near the end that I feel was a little bit rushed. Hence, this is happening with so many books. I feel like some bits near the ending were a little bit rushed, particularly there's a fight between Brasti and someone else, and I feel like it just happened like off screen or off page, and I was just a bit like, huh? I don't really get why, and it just was like something that was like not really a big deal, but I was just like, okay, I guess, and it did put me off giving it 5 stars, but I'm hopefully moving on to the sequel this month because Jade picked it for me for my January TBR, and that sequel, Night's Shadow, is her favourite book in the series, so I think her favourite book of all time, I feel like it is. Don't quote me on that. So this one was really good, but there was just that one thing that was kind of rushed near the end that I didn't understand, and that's what dropped the 0.5 stars. This is another epic fantasy. Are we surprised? And I don't remember the character's name because I suck and I read it about a year ago again now, but basically the Greatcoats are these kind of law enforcers that followed the Duke or the King, and the King died and he had lots of like quite socialist and good ideas for what a king should be, what society should be like, and loads of like rich people didn't like it. And the Greatcoats were like his main law enforcers. They went around kind of doing kind of court of law type stuff around the country, making judgments and getting people to pay taxes and stuff like that. But then the king was assassinated, and this was all like before the book starts. The main character is one of the very last Greatcoats, but now everyone kind of looks down on them, spits on them, thinks like the king was a traitor and this and that, and it's very strange, like everyone just hates greatcoats and thinks they're more like turncoats kind of thing. And yeah, I think it was really, really fucking good. Really good setting, really good characters. Very excited to continue with the series, but yeah, just that slight thing at the end was a bit rushed. Now the last book I want to talk to you about was actually only a 4-star, and I originally gave it 3.5 and then I upped it to 4 near the end of the year. And that is in fact She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is the beautiful Illumicrate edition. When I first read this, and when I first read, the same thing happened with Jasmine Throne, is these books are being marketed as sapphic books. Sapphic fantasy, sapphic is the focus, sapphic's all the marketing. So you expect it to be a really big part of the book, and it's actually not. And that is fine as long as you don't tell people. And it's not the author's fault, it's the marketing's fault. But as long as you don't tell people it's all sapphic, blah, blah, blah. There is a sapphic relationship. I would not say it's the main focus. I would not say it's even a side focus. I'd say it kind of just happens. There's like a build-up, but it's not really. Like there is a build-up because they meet and they don't like get together straight away or anything, but in that sense there's a build-up, but I wouldn't say there's any build-up emotionally, really. And then by the end I'm like, do they even like each other really that much? Like it's a bit confusing, but everything else about this book is incredible. I really, really like the setting. I really, really like the main character and the choices she made, and like especially by the ending, the choices she was making. Very like morally grey, very different, I feel, from what we get. Kind of similar to Iron Widow in that sense. The other perspective that you get is from this general called Ouyang, who's on the other side of the main character, who is called Zhu Chongba. Yeah, that's it. Zhu Chongba is the main character. This has been compared as Mulan meets Song of Achilles. It is nothing like either of these things. It just happens to be set during the same age as Mulan was with like the Mongols, and the Song of Achilles side, just no. It's just not. It's just not anything like Song of Achilles. It's just sapphic. Like people are just comping that because it's gay. Like it's not how it works. Or Achillean, shall we say? Because sapphic and Achillean are the, yeah, okay. In overall, I would also say this is a historical fiction. This is not a fantasy book. This is not historical fantasy. This is historical fiction with a slight fantasy twist or embellishment, shall we say. This is not fantasy, which obviously it would come under fantasy in general, as in it comes under SFF. But when you wanna really get stuck into an epic fantasy and you get something maybe like this, I think that's why people are getting disappointed or rating them lower. But as a book itself, it's really good. And if you know what you're getting into when you get into it, I think you will really, really enjoy it a lot more. I think you should read it. Essentially, I think everyone should try it out, at least. I think say like some things in the middle, like nothing really happens, so I think also that dropped the star for me. But overall, I think this is a good one to try, especially if you like East Asian fantasy. I am a bit of a sucker for East Asian fantasy, so maybe that's just me. But yeah, I think everyone would really enjoy this if you know what you're getting into when you get into it. So that is it from me, everyone. I just wanted to let you know about all of my almost but not quite books from 2021. I hope you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Make sure you give this video a like if you did enjoy. Leave me a little star emoji in the comments if you were here but you didn't really have anything to say but wanted to let me know that you were here. Make sure you subscribe to get all the future content from me in your inbox. All of my links are in the description, including my Patreon. If you don't know what goes on my Patreon, then this is what you're missing out on. I don't even remember. Who is Wise People? Who is that? Oh, Danny is Wise People. Child changed the name. What does it mean? So yeah, who knows? Children are weird. Speaking of my Patreon, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone at my deity tier. So that is Becca, Meg, Rachel, Lisa, Lydia, Mercy, Sarah, Tori, Liv, Adinda, Celeste, Britt, Marloose, Kay, Danny, Hannah, William, Chris, Andy, Lauren, Kate, Kendra, Ashley, KW, Frog, Lynn, and Amy. Thank you guys so much for all of your support, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!